This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana makes car selling fast and easy from start to finish. Enter your license plate or VIN and get a real offer in seconds, down to the penny. If you accept, Carvana will come pick up your car from your driveway. Or you can drop it off at one of our car vending machines. Either way, you get paid instantly. It's fast, transparent, and 100% online. Car selling that saves your time. That's Carvana.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
This episode of The Price of Football is brought to you by Football 360 Pro Series, an online course in football business and finance, which features our very own Kieran Maguire. On the course, you get 10 modules covering everything from football club financial statements to spending restrictions, financial analysis, and accounting for player transfers.
In other words, amortization. The content is broken down into easy-to-consume 15 minutes a day lessons featuring videos and quizzes. And on top of that, Pro Series features 6 weekly sessions with football industry experts, providing expertise and networking in an intimate online classroom environment. If you're looking to take your next step in the football industry, or even you're just an avid amortization curious football fan, Football 360 Pro Series is for you. Our students are all ages and all kinds of backgrounds, but they're united by one thing. They're all footy nerds.
I'm amortization curious. I might sign up for this, Kieran, especially as there's currently a 15% discount for Price of Football listeners when using the discount code POF2025. That's POF2025 for a 15% discount. The course is limited to 20 students, so book your place as soon as possible. Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. I know they say never let the light in on the magic, Kieran, but I didn't know you could do Pilates, let alone do it whilst counting me in to this week's show. I'm very impressed with your flexibility there.
Well, if you've ever seen my tax return, flexibility is my middle name.
I bet HMRC hate your tax return. Oh my God, it's Maguire's tax return. It'll be fine. Has he put a little note in telling us how to run our business? Yes, he has. Yes, he certainly has. It's Newsday, Kieran. I think we need to be honest here. We are recording on a Tuesday evening rather than Wednesday evening this week for various reasons, which means that if the Man City results do come through tomorrow morning, we'll have to have a special show. I may suggest this to the Premier League, Kieran. I think what they need to do with the Man City results is a kind of Strictly Come Dancing Sunday evening results show style thing, where you get 115 people all under the lights, and then somebody like Tess just goes, "Okay, charge number 1, drum roll, oh," and then halfway through you have a bit of music, nothing too challenging, probably Sophie Ellis-Bextor, and then Claudia.
She lives near to me, Sophie.
Does she? She
lives in Sussex. Yeah, because her other half, he's from Keene, I think.
Oh, okay. She's. I can attest that she is delightful, Sophie Ellis-Bextor, as indeed is her mum.
Blue Peter.
I met Sophie on a couple of shows, and she was very funny about the fact that men of my age always said, "People like you, you're always very polite, always very nice. You'll say very." But I just count in my head, she said, I just count how long it's going to be before you mention my mum. She says, men of a certain age. I said, well, it's your mum and Claire Grogan, to be perfectly honest.
Yes, true.
For men of my generation. There is some big news, Kieran. It's sort of big news. We've known about this for a long time, but we have our first ever English football regulator, Kieran, officially named, officially enthroned. You've told us who it's been for quite some time, but perhaps you'd like to make the formal announcement.
Yes, the chair of the independent regulator has been confirmed as David Kogan. There has been, I think, a wee bit of a delay in terms of his appointment, and that was due for political reasons. He has made some donations to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer and Lisa Nandy, as well, I think, as one or two other people in the Labour Party. So I think there was some opposition from the Conservative Party. It has now, Dame Caroline Dinenage has said, who is sort of the head of the sort of the appointee committee, has said she's very happy. And also, it should be noted that he was first suggested for the job whilst Rishi Sunak was still Prime Minister as well. So there has been a thorough process. It has now been resolved. For people not familiar with David Kogan, he is a Spurs fan. I think that's the first thing that we all want to know. He is from a background of broadcasting and negotiations, and he's effectively negotiated historically on behalf of both the Premier League and the EFL, and I think he's also been involved in the WSL's negotiations for its broadcasting rights as well. So he is familiar with that part of the industry. Now, some people might be saying, well, hello, okay, that's fine for broadcasting, but what about his background from a regulatory perspective? And here he doesn't have any. So why that particular appointment? I think this is sort of a tacit admission that although the government has said, and I think the FSA have said, and many people I know have said, we need to get a deal sorted between the Premier League and the EFL when it comes to the distribution of monies from, which let's be honest, are heading from the Premier League to the EFL. No progress has been made for 3 or 4 years, and therefore they feel that David Kogan's expertise in this area, should the backstop be called, and the backstop will be called if effectively both parties say we can't come to an agreement. My understanding was that the last time the Premier League approached the EFL, there were 3 high-profile executives from the Premier League, of whom 2 are still there at present. And they went in and they offered less than was being offered about 4 or 5 years ago. So the EFL have thrown their toys out the pram on that, and you can understand that position. So that's where we are. So he has, therefore, probably about half an hour before we recorded this show, he has appointed a guy called Richard Monks to be the chief executive. Now, Richard Monks is from a regulatory background. And remember, the role of a chief executive is more sort of a day-to-day role. That the chair is involved in sort of for the overall strategy of the regulator. There's been a couple of other appointments in terms of non-executive. So Dame Helen Stevenson, she's worked at ECB, she's worked for charities. Simon Levine, I think he's ex-Mishcon, so he's from a legal background. So I think what David Kogan is doing, he's putting together a series of people with different experiences from different particular skill sets. And that's what you need. There's no point the regulator putting forward ideas if they're not going to stand up to regulatory or legal scrutiny. So having a lawyer involved helps. Having somebody with a regulatory background helps. There has been talk about some form of fan-related appointment. I don't know how that will work. So that's where we are. And just to summarise the 3 elements where the regulator will be focusing the work. First of all, the protection of the heritage of the game. That means moving stadiums. That means moving leagues. That means changing things which don't matter but do matter. Changing the colour of the shirt, changing the badge, unless the fans agree. If we take a look at what happened at Brentford, for example, the Brentford owner suggested that they need to move from Griffin Park to the G-Tech. These are the benefits. This is going to be the impact financially on the club in terms of extra money and extra things we can do. These will be the improved facilities. And the fans said, well, it's not that far away from Griffin Park. Let's do it. And so I don't think we should view football fans as being Luddites in all of this. So there's the protection of the sort of the history and the heritage and the identity of the football club. There will be additional powers, and these powers will have the backing of statute when it comes to the owners and directors issues. And the final issue will be the distribution of monies between the Premier League and the EFL. So, in an ideal world, we don't want to go down that particular avenue. It will be a role of last resort as far as the regulator is concerned.
We'll be coming on to the EFL and Premier League in a news story in a moment, which seems to have annoyed Finlay. Most Brentford fans I know, Kieran, were absolutely delighted to move to a new ground because it, as one of them said, hasn't got a pub on every bloody corner.
Yes.
She just said, the amount of time you meet somebody, you say, who do you support, Brentford? And they give you the information that it's got a pub on every corner, as though we didn't know. So has it? Every corner? Oh, fuck. I've only discovered two of them. You and I did a panel with Dame Caroline Dynage during the Women's Euros, Kieran. Tracy Crouchall was nice. And although she represents a party I've never voted for, never will, I was very impressed with her, the cut of her jib. So I'm pleased to hear that she was involved in the recruitment process. I don't know if you have a personal relationship with David Kogan. I wouldn't dream of asking you about him. But do you think, is he the sort of person, the first thing he will do, will he gather interested parties together? Will he do a tour of clubs? Will he be asking people for ideas, suggestions? What sort of thing would you expect him to do to hit the ground running? Or will he just wait and troubleshoot when trouble arrives?
I think he is very conscious that he's going to have a fairly big in tray. I think he is a robust individual. He will not suffer fools gladly. He might upset some people. He got a reputation for being direct. As I understand it, and we are recording this on Tuesday afternoon, I believe that there's going to be some sort of gathering taking place on Wednesday. Now, that could involve clubs, that could involve other stakeholders. So I think that very much it's a case of, first of all, and I have sort of counselled opinion from other people who I know, he's a good listener. So he will take on board your views. He won't necessarily agree with them. And if he does disagree with them, he will agree to disagree. And that's surely something which we should welcome in society today, because it seems something which many people are incapable of. So he's got a lot of work on. It's a £130,000 a year role for 3 days a week. I'll be honest, I've looked at his finances, of course. He doesn't need £130,000 a year. He's not doing this for money. I can absolutely assure you of this. I think he's wants to make a difference, and this is sort of a role which is being taken on for the public good rather than anything else.
Yeah, David, I don't know if you are listening to this, but if you are, my advice would be don't read the Daily Mail or the Telegraph or the Times for the next 6 weeks. Probably stay away from them, because I think, I'll tell you who will be happy, Kieran, the PGMOL, because I think VAR is going to get 6 weeks off, because I think we're going to have 6 weeks of people willfully misunderstanding what the role of the regulator is and trying to turn it into a political football, no pun intended. I owe an apology to Sheffield Wednesday fans, Kieran, because I suggested last week that things had probably got as bad as they could go in terms of things being done to them, but more things are being done to them.
Yes, there is a further embargo which has come from the EFL. So this is now I think we've now got 5 embargoes and 1 transfer fee restriction, which means that they can't sign any players, I think, until January 2027. This is for the non-payment of wages. We did query when we spoke a week ago. There was a non-payment to a football creditor. I think we speculated whether that was players, or could that be in relation to transfer fees, or it could be loan fees for players who have been with Sheffield Wednesday. But this is very much the EFL putting as much pressure, I think, as they can do legally onto the shoulders of Dejan Shansiri. I've been monitoring social media, and an element of the Sheffield Wednesday fan base. I can absolutely understand their frustration. You can absolutely understand their anger at the mess the club's in. They're pointing the figure at the EFL. My observation is that first of all, the EFL in 2016 is not the same as the EFL in 2025. We've got a new chair, we've got a new chief executive, and so on. And also, the EFL is bound by its own rulebook. So you can't get rid of somebody just because they're belligerent, just because they're incompetent, just because they're not answering the phone. You actually have to have a breach of the rules. Dejan Chansiri is not currently, not to my knowledge, subject to any criminal proceedings, in which, if found guilty, that would mean that they could get rid of him or they could force him to sell the club, and therefore he's able to hang around. It's not in his interest to hang around, but until he starts to see sense, as we've said so many times, until he starts to see sense in terms of what he's demanding for the club, I can't see much more progress being made.
I understand what you say, Kieran, about the EFL and not breaking the rules, but if he were the owner of a car manufacturing plant, for example, and he employed 400 people at this car manufacturing plant, and for 3 months running, he hasn't paid the salary of the employees at the car manufacturing plant. What would happen then? What would the legal situation be then?
Okay, I'm from an insolvency background. I have investigated and ultimately been, sometimes appointed, or my employer was appointed as the administrator or the equivalent. When you talk to the staff, they say, "Well, where else can we find a job? This could be the biggest employer in the village, the biggest employer in the town." So it's the staff who are worried about checks, well, not checks bouncing, but going to the supermarket and not being able to buy groceries because their salary hasn't gone in. Individuals suffer. It's not illegal to pay. Well, it is illegal to pay wages late, but in terms of the repercussions, they are relatively mild. So, just sort of combining our first two stories, I think this will be very much seen as a test case as soon as David Kogan formally takes up the role, which I think is from the sort of 1st of November when the department opens. I think what he's doing now, he's been appointed, and it is very much a case of going out to different stakeholders. What are the powers of the regulator in terms of Sheffield Wednesday? And here I say, we all want the same thing. Even Sheffield United fans I speak to say, I say, I hate Wednesday, but my next door neighbour's a Wednesday fan and he's one of my best mates, or my dad's a Wednesday fan and my auntie's a Wednesday fan. It's not, and even you think about our relationship with Brighton and Palace. You can't have a rivalry without rivals, and you want to be top dog, but you can't be top dog if there's no other dog. So, my big concern is that if Sheffield Wednesday is seen as a test case and the regulator goes in and is able to use some of its powers to get rid of Chansiri, then you've got Sheffield Wednesday operating as a football club and losing money. Who is going to fund those losses? Well, that comes down to you and me. That comes down to the taxpayer. And people say, well, hold on, everybody in London is subsidising West Ham, for example, from a taxpayer point of view. But I think this is a different case. And my concern is that should the regulator effectively operate in a similar way to Ofsted and say you're not displaying sufficient professionalism, sufficient business acumen to allow you to carry on to continue to control this fine institution, we're going to helicopter in effectively the equivalent of a firm of administrators. Who is going to fund that? And what precedent does that set for other owners of clubs in the Championship, because they might say, "I'll tell you what, next year, what we're going to do, we're going to go all in. We're going to spend 60 or 70 million pounds on players. We're going to bring them on big wages, and we're going to try to get into the playoffs, or we're going to try to get directly promoted to the Premier League. And if it doesn't work out, the regulator will fly in." And I come from a financial background. If I go back to what happened in 2007, 2008, when we had the global financial crisis, what happened? Privatise the profits, nationalise the losses. You can't do that in football. As much as we love football, you can't do that. So I think the regulator has got to do things at the right pace and to take on the right counsel before any actions are taken.
If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
Netflix has a new monstrous story to tell. In 1950s Wisconsin, Ed Gein lived quietly on a decaying farm, hiding a house of horrors so gruesome it would redefine the American nightmare. Driven by isolation, psychosis, and an all-consuming obsession with his mother, he committed crimes that would haunt Hollywood for decades. The third and most harrowing installment of Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan's anthology series. Watch Monster, the Ed Gein story, streaming now only on Netflix.
It's not a happy city at the moment, is it, for either? I mean, the way things are going for United, we'll be discussing how much it's cost them to sack Chris Wilder again.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, fair play. We saw a pitch invasion at Sheffield Wednesday on Saturday, although it wasn't a pitch invasion as such. It was a pre-arranged march onto the pitch. The players clearly didn't feel under any... The referee, I think, obviously was told beforehand, because the players just sort of milled about. Hats off to Coventry fans who were chanting their support for Sheffield Wednesday. But yeah, we talked last week about Barry Bannon being inspiration. There's only so much that players can do in the end, and they faced a really good Coventry City team on Saturday, and they lost, and the fans won't be having a go at the players in any way, shape or form. But you can already see the narrative of this season. Unless something happens quite quickly, we're going to be looking at Sheffield Wednesday being a League One team again, which makes it more difficult for them to be sold and so on. So, anyway, in the meantime, Manchester United clearly flushed with current recent success need a weekend off, Kieran.
Yes, clearly, Offshore Jim has been looking at his diary and going, next Tuesday or Wednesday, nothing's happening. Yeah. Tuesday or Wednesday after that, nothing happening. Tuesday, what's going on here? Europe? Oh no, we're not there. Carabao Cup? Not there. So look, let's be honest. Manchester United is a global brand. Fair to say. I would argue certainly one of the top two most famous players for Manchester United this century, Cristiano Ronaldo. He's playing for Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia. So it looks as if Manchester United are considering at least one, possibly more, mid-season friendlies around the world. Amorim has, clearly he's come up with the hostage video comment. We've got fans all around the world. This is an opportunity for them to see. It will be good money because it will be underwritten effectively by PIF. It will sell out because it's Manchester United, and then it's Manchester United versus Cristiano. That's not happened too often in history. So that's one of the things which could be arising. And I think it is indicative that as far as the owners are concerned, and we saw this with the the post-season friendly 48 hours after last season ended. We've seen it with the pre-season tour. That the owners probably value money more than they value footballing success. The best thing for the players to do is possibly to go to Saudi Arabia, go warm camp, bonding, all of that type of thing. But if one player comes back with a tweaked hamstring for a club which is spluttering, it, in my view, from a footballing point of view, it seems a bit daft. Now, it could be that it will be one of those friendlies where people are more interested in just showing off to the crowd and not going to stretch themselves. But that's the direction of travel. And also, Manchester United, probably the equivalent of Harlem Globetrotters as far as a global football club is concerned, and everybody wants to see them. So does it make sense financially? Yes, it does. Does it make sense from a footballing point of view? The owners don't care.
Well, the irony is, Kieran, if Man United were in the Conference League playing on a Thursday, they would arguably earn less through winning that than they could do from this one prestige friendly, in a way, because we know money's no object, is it, for PIF? This isn't in the script, Kieran, because it's only just happened, but I understand UEFA will be making it easier for other clubs to play outside their own countries in future.
Yes, there has now been confirmation by UEFA, reluctantly, that on an exceptional basis, they have approved Barcelona versus Villarreal,
right,
taking place in Miami, which I think is that the south coast of Spain? Or is that west? I don't know.
Just to the south. I can't. I always get Miami and Cadiz mixed up.
Yeah.
Look at the map. Yeah.
And then we've got Milan versus Como taking place in Perth.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, perhaps Ange will be there by then. Who knows?
Yeah.
Now, there's a big Italian heritage population in Australia. I absolutely get that. But from a footballing integrity point of view, if this is nominally Villarreal's home match, we've got a problem, because 90% of the fans in Miami are going to be supporting Barcelona. I would suspect that 90% of the fans in Perth are going to be supporting Milan, which would not be normally the case. So there's a footballing integrity issue. Seferin has said, because of the vagueness of FIFA's own rulebook, UEFA have had to accept these requests. FIFA themselves don't seem to understand their own rulebook. There doesn't seem to be urgency from FIFA. Perhaps they've got other things to do. But looking at the pronouncement from UEFA, it said it's spoken to leagues, the La Liga and Serie A. They're not happy. It's spoken to fans in Spain and Italy. They're not happy. It's spoken to other leagues. The Australian A-League's not happy with this because it takes attention away. MLS isn't happy about this. It's spoken to other clubs. So, does this give... Real Madrid won't be happy with this because it gives Barcelona an advantage. And it's spoken to players, and players aren't happy. But apart from those people, everybody's in favour of it.
Even in terms of the football integrity, you'd really want to be the two clubs that play those Italian clubs the week after they get back from Australia, wouldn't you? I mean, we saw that, and Palace were tired enough getting back from Poland on Sunday. It's just, oddly enough, we've rarely mentioned the Spanish government on this pod, Kieran, but we will be mentioning them again later on in a different story. But the Spanish government, furious about this, publicly furious about this, making lots of comments about the not just the integrity of the game, but the integrity of the fans, the integrity of the community. UEFA can't possibly say we're approving this. There's two of them. It can't be a one-off because there's two of them. Once these two have been allowed to play there, then every league's going to try and do this.
Yes,
this is the thin end. For me, this is one of the most disturbing stories we've covered. And it's only just been broken, so we haven't had time, you and I, to research it in depth, and we will mention it again. I genuinely think this is one of the most disturbing stories we've covered since we started the pod in terms of what it could lead to.
Yes, and we talk about football clubs making these decisions. We're talking about Barcelona behind it. It's not.
Yeah.
You have to separate clubs from the people that make the decisions at clubs. Dejan Chansiri does not represent Sheffield Wednesday Football Club or Sheffield Wednesday Football Club fans. He represents himself and he does what's best for himself. Well, it's the same here. The individuals who are behind these decisions. And this is one of the reasons why I am very, very concerned about the rise of hedge funds, private equity, and so on in football. And I'm not being a Luddite, in my view. They are very, very good at what they set out to do, which is to make money. The other stakeholders in those other industries, they're not setting out to make life awkward for them, but if it gets in the way of the private equity funds making money, then the priority is to do what's best for the private equity fund owners. So this is going to be heading in one direction. FIFA does have an opportunity, I think, to stand shoulder to shoulder alongside UEFA. I think the chances of that happening are fairly remote. FIFA's priorities these days are very baffling, as we will come to soon. And I hope this is just one of those issues that until there is some form of legal confirmation in terms of the sanctity of individual leagues, then it won't go any further. Against that, of course, we've got the expansion of NFL. And when I went to Wolverhampton on Sunday, along with my rail tickets, I did see lots of NFL fans, English NFL fans. And they're saying, well, why should we be denied the opportunity to see NFL? I said, well, you're not. Go to America and watch it.
You've touched on something. I'm so concerned with not sounding gammon here, Kieran, because people have accused me of this. The difference with the NFL is that the NFL want to set up, in an ideal world, set up franchises here. They'd love to try again with a London-based NFL team, a Dublin-based NFL team, a German NFL team, or a European version of the NFL. That's entirely what this is about. This is not about letting English fans have the chance to watch NFL games. And I've got absolutely nothing against. I will always chat to Scandinavian people who come to Selhurst Park. I'll always chat to. I think it's brilliant that so many Southeast Asian fans come to White Hart Lane to watch Spurs. I understand that there's a diaspora of Italian, Spanish people all over the world who have sentimental connections to these clubs. If they want to come and see Milan, Madrid, come here to see Milan and Madrid.
Yeah.
Because if club,
it is different when it's real.
Well, of course it is. You're not seeing the same experience. You might as well watch it friendly. And if clubs are arguing, as they are, oh no, we're just doing our moral duty and bringing our club to the people who support it. That's not why this is happening.
No,
this is greed. It's sheer greed, and it's the thin end of the wedge. And as soon as 1-2 clubs are allowed to do it, we get into a situation 5 seasons down the line where we say, well, it's going to be 10 games. Don't forget it's 10 games. And then what do you do with a season ticket? Or when Palace announced that, well, we're going to play 3 games in I said, well, I've got a season ticket. What do I do? My brother-in-law is a Denver Broncos fan, absolutely furious when Broncos play because he's got a season ticket, doesn't get a refund for when Broncos play in London because they say, well, you can fly to London and watch them there. It's just, this is really worrying news, Kieran. We mentioned the EFL and the PL, and of course, this long-running argument about the distribution of money. It seems the EFL, one club in particular, they're not presenting a completely united face on this, Kieran.
Yes, the relatively new Birmingham City owner Tom Wagner. He has spoken. Now that there's quite a few events taking place, Soccer X leaders and so on. I think he has spoken at one of these, and he's a fascinating guy to listen to. He does seem to get Birmingham City as well, to his credit. But when it comes to the EFL saying I think the EFL's demands for 25% of a joint deal, in my view, have always been unrealistic. But there has been talk, well, and I think even Steve Parish mentioned this at one point, well, yeah, if we get them fairly close to 20%, we think we can perhaps go along with that. That's before, of course, the £100 million legal bills, which started to impact upon the distribution to individual Premier League clubs. So he said, well, hold on, and said Tom, Premier League is the goose which lays the golden eggs. It has to be competitive itself, and it has to be competitive with La Liga, Bundesliga, and so on. And if too much money is siphoned off to the EFL, the Premier League will lose its competitive edge. I absolutely 100% agree with him. But you can still give the EFL 18, 19, 20%, and the Premier League will still have. What he doesn't appear to have done, in my view, is that he's not done his sums. The fact that we both support clubs that can outbid 16 clubs in La Liga, 16 clubs in Serie A when it comes to player recruitment, and we support clubs of a modest middle class basis who, let's face it, 15, 20 years ago, nobody would have thought of being Premier League clubs themselves. So he does appear to be siding here with the Premier League viewpoint. Could it be that he's an American owner and he's therefore representing the views of the other American owners who are already in the Premier League? Certainly he's ambitious, is Tom. He wants Birmingham City to return to the top tier, as do many other owners, and therefore perhaps he's looking after his own longer-term interests, should that be the case. But it does mean that we're fully aware that there are fissions and fractions in the Premier League when it comes to the objectives of club owners. That also appears to be the case as far as the EFL Championship is concerned as well. Be interesting to get the views of Reynolds and McElhenney.
Well, this is the you've hit the nail on the head, Kieran, in a more elegant way than I probably would. I would have just smashed it on the head. You approached the nail in a very delicate, sensitive way, gave it a little tap, moved on. But it's not just Birmingham. I imagine the owners of Coventry, Wrexham, as you say, are one or two other clubs in the top six, shall we say, of the EFL, are thinking to themselves, well, I'm not entirely, because this could be us having to give more money away this time next year. We all know self-interest is a very important driver for most football club owners. I just think it's interesting you said this out loud. And also, the Premier League would have to give 3/4 of its money away for it to be less competitive than it is at the moment with the other European leagues, because that broadcasting deal is the gift that keeps on giving. Talking of the gift that keeps on giving, Kieran, we haven't mentioned our old friends at Macquarie for quite some time. Macquarie seem to have been, they're back in the game, Kieran. I don't know if they've been having a rest and getting some money together themselves, but they've had a few months off the eye of Sauron in terms of it's lighted on Macquarie Bank again. Who have they duped this time?
I went past their offices on Monday night.
Did you?
Because I was. There's somebody that's doing a documentary on Sheffield Wednesday at present, right. And he's interviewed many Wednesday fans. He just wanted somebody who was sort of one step removed. So I went up and recorded that in a pub next to Macquarie's offices. Very nice offices they appear to have. And the reason why they got...
Sorry, it's that sort of documentary. I know it's always when you get an email from your agent saying, there's this documentary, they're really keen to talk to you. Oh, great, where are we going? There's a pub in... Oh, right, okay, that sort of documentary.
Yes, so Macquarie Bank have lent money via... the official phrase is invoice discounting. I flippantly call these corporate payday loans, and they're not. They've got some characteristics which are similar to both of those. So this is in respect of the sales of James Justin, Tom Cannon, and Casey McAteer by Leicester City. Now, all of those players have been sold on deals which involve 3 or 4 instalments, and this is the problem. If you sell a player for 10 million, and these aren't big sales, by the way, but if you sell a player for £10 million on a 3 or let's say a 4 instalment basis, you get £2.5 million and you get 3 IOUs from Ipswich or Leeds, whoever the other club happens to be. And what are you going to do with those IOUs? Can't go down a pawnbroker as such, but what you can do, you can go to the Australian equivalent of a pawnbroker, and that's Macquarie Bank. And they'll say, "G'day." Apologies to all our Australian listeners for that absolutely appalling.
I'm sorry, kid. That was very funny.
So Macquarie come along and they say, "You've got 3 IOUs for £7.5 million. Tell you what, we will give you 6 million now. And when those payments are made, the Premier League will effectively take the money from the club that's paying and hand them across to us." So there's an imputed interest rate in the sense that they don't give the full value of the IOUs. They will give a fraction of it, and the difference is the interest charge. Why go to Macquarie? It's because A, that they've got a dedicated division that specialises in this, and B, as we said on many occasions, the traditional banks based here in Europe, they don't want to lend to football clubs. It's reputational risk. If I'm the local Barclays or HSB branch manager and I've lent Leicester City £20 million and they've exceeded the overdraft limit, I say, "Well, sorry guys, I have to put you into administration." I've got an awful lot of angry customers, clients who say, "Well, if that's the way you're treating my football club, I'll take my business elsewhere."
Sorry, what did you say? Is invoice discount? Is that the official
Invoice discounting? Yes,
right, and that's fairly common, is it? Then
you do see it in other industries, but what is different here is that let's say that I'm an engineering company and I might sell you a piece of machinery for 50 grand or 100 grand. Normally, invoice discounting is because you're going to pay me in perhaps 30 days or 60 days. So therefore, the bank will come in and say, "Look, we'll give you that money now and you pay us back in 30 days. In the case of Leicester City, that money is an advantage for 1, 2, 3 years and so on.
Is it always the club that goes to Macquarie, or would Macquarie have people looking for clubs and going, you seem to have a few outstanding instalments. Do you want to turn that into one easily repayable loan type deal?
It's a bit of push and pull. Football clubs attend events, as I've just been saying, the likes of Leaders and Soccer X and so on. Macquarie will have a stand there. You then build up a relationship. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this, by the way. This is perfectly legitimate. It's fairly lucrative for Macquarie. So I've seen some of the deals where you might be looking at, say, 12 or 14%. I've seen others around about 8 or 9% interest. So it's good from the lender's point of view. It's also pretty much guaranteed money. Leeds United, Ipswich, whoever the other clubs are going to be, they are going to be playing Leicester on the due dates, because if they failed to do so, I think this is something we covered on one of the questions.
We did, yeah.
If they failed to do so, they will be subject to sanction. Potentially they could have a transfer embargo themselves, or we saw with Sheffield United a points deduction and so on. So it's the one thing which keeps football going, is that you tend to pay other clubs unless you're Dejan Chansiri.
Support American-made tariff-free clothing with American Giant. They aren't affected by tariffs because their clothing products never left the U.S. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code STAPLE20 at American-Giant.com.
This next news story, Kieran, I find slightly insensitive, its inclusion, to be perfectly honest. I'm not entirely sure this is the week to include a story about Everton, frankly. Although it is fairly typical Palace that we are Liverpool's bogey team and Everton are ours, which is but Everton and Wrexham, Kieran, issuing new shares.
Yes, Everton issued £10 million worth of shares. So this has come from the Friedkin Group, it looks like, in August. But they've just followed that up by issuing a fresh tranche of shares, around about £45 million. Now, whether that's to pay for the final instalments as far as the stadium is concerned, whether it's because the club is still losing money on an operational basis, and therefore you need those funds from the owner. But it does show that Friedkin are big backers of the club. I think the one downside, and I've got friends who are Evertonians, of course, because I work in the city. I've got friends who are shareholders of Everton Football Club, is that if more shares are being issued to the owners, the big American owners, it means that their overall proportion of Everton Football Club grows and grows, which means that the existing shareholders, those sort of ma and pa, brother and sister, shareholders in the club, their stake in Everton is being diluted all the time. And that means that the value of their shares is going down. But it's better than going to a bank. And the thing about shares is that you never have to repay them.
We spoke on the questions pod as well, Kieran, about Premier League clubs without front of shirt sponsors. Arsenal in discussions over extending a shirt sponsorship deal that's becoming increasingly unpopular with a lot of their fans, if anecdotal evidence is anything to go by.
Yes, I think Arsenal have now had the Visit Rwanda arm patch for probably best part of 10 years, if not further. The Rwandan president, Paul Kagame, is an Arsenal fan. I think the initial deal was worth £10 million a year. The word on the street appears that Rwanda Tourist Authority is willing to pay an uptick, shall we say, on that price on the back of Arsenal being more in Europe, high profile. And also, I think we can say with a degree of certainty is that the value of sleeve sponsorship is going to increase next season because the gambling companies will still be allowed to advertise their products on sleeves, but not on front of shirt. So therefore, there could be a drift from front to sleeve. The defenders of Rwanda will say, well, hold on, we've got a relationship with Bayern Munich, we've got a relationship with Paris Saint-Germain, we've got a relationship with Atletico Madrid. Stop picking on us for having a relationship with Arsenal as well. But I think it's slightly more high profile because it's on the shirts.
Of course, the other problem for the big clubs that are in Europe is that increasingly we're seeing countries in Europe that don't allow gambling sponsorship anyway. So when you're trying to sell your front of shirt deal or your sleeve deal to a gambling company from the seasons on, they were saying, well, we're not going to pay you that much because if you play in Scandinavia, you won't be able to have any of our products anywhere on your shirt.
That's true. So therefore, we see the popularity of crypto, because crypto investing is gambling with a small g, but it falls outside of the net of the strict rules banning gambling advertising in some countries.
Yeah. We promised our listeners on the last show, Kieran, a big FIFA story. It's coming up. But before that, I imagine when President Trump was told that there was a letter in his inbox from a Paraguayan woman who was a former Miss Universe contestant, he might have started to pull his collar slightly and look, but it turns out it's actually about football. So this former Paraguayan Miss Universe contestant is, good luck to her, petitioning President Trump, and I'm sure you'll tell us why.
Yes, this is a reference to Guadalupe Gonzalez, who is a former Paraguayan Miss Universe contestant. And people say, well, what's that got to do with Donald Trump? He used to own the Miss Universe pageant before, and apparently he gave it up to go and do something else, probably play golf. But what we are seeing is that the World Cup, which we will be coming to very, very shortly, the World Cup is taking place in 8 months' time. Now, should you or I get tickets and we decide to go, we're quite fortunate here in the UK because we're subject to ESTA, effectively is the visa waiver program. So I teach in the United States on a regular basis, and I go across and I sign my ESTA once every 2 years, and it costs me 15 quid or whatever it is, and I don't think twice about it. The ESTA is not universal. The United States takes a more draconian approach to people from some other countries, and especially quite a few countries from South America. So therefore, under those circumstances, you need something called a B1/B2 visa. And this is why Guadalupe Gonzalez has written to President Trump, because there's huge queues. The process is taking many, many months. Presently, it's between 3 to 6 months. There is a fear that those queues will grow for both demand and supply point of perspective. First of all, in terms of demand, if Paraguay are playing in the World Cup, you've got more people from Paraguay, more people from Uruguay, more people from Colombia wanting to go to the United States. Perfectly understandable, just as we would expect from all of the 48 or 47 other countries who want to see their national football team play in the tournament. But the trouble is, we've got more people wanting to do it, and of course, following the cutbacks that we've seen in the United States, following the changes, and this isn't a party political comment, that there has been significant job cuts. There's fewer people able to process the interviews, the fingerprinting, and also you have to have an interview. And out of that interview, saying, well, why are you going there? Are you definitely coming back? Have you got a return ticket? These interviews are not just a rubber stamping. 19% of applicants from Paraguay have been rejected. I think from some other South American countries, it's as high as a third of people. So what Guadalupe has done is said to Donald Trump, any chance of taking a look at this? She's done this. I think she's done this via Instagram. So I don't think that's normal diplomatic channels. But we wait to see. One would imagine that given that there is such a close and friendly relationship, a bromance between Donald Trump and Gianni Infantino, that Gianni would perhaps be putting pressure on this as well, because he always looks after the best interests of the fans.
Yeah, I imagine Donald Trump gave up the Miss Universe business because he was fed up with them nicking his spray tan. I imagine it would be. I'll tell you what is slightly worrying. Ali spoke to quite a few Canadian performers during the Edinburgh Festival. There's a couple of mates of mine who are Canadian comedians who tell me how difficult it is for them to cross the border into the States these days, especially if your passport says actor, comedian, writer, because they're telling us stories of being taken aside by customs officials and having to reassure them that their acting, writing and comedy doesn't include jibes at the United States or the president. One told me that he actually had to show some YouTube stuff of his act to prove that he was just so. I think there's going to be a lot of trouble crossing the border into America. I mean, it could be 3 or 4 weeks before. I mean, he's still changing the cities that it takes place in. And talking of the World Cup, Kieran, we've almost out of nowhere, FIFA are under enormous political pressure. Suddenly, we've seen the Spanish government threatening to withdraw the team, or the Spanish FA threatening to withdraw the team from the World Cup finals over the decision to allow Israel to continue in the World Cup. This is not the place to talk about that, but it is the place to talk about continued financial pressure that FIFA are coming over about the selling of tickets.
Well, I don't think FIFA are going to budge on this, but what we have now seen is the initial tranche of tickets which have been made available to holders of Visa cards has now come and gone. Those tickets have been allocated. And what FIFA have said is that in order to try to restrict touting, there's only going to be one official reseller of tickets, and that's FIFA.
Whoa.
But they are the official ticket tout of their own competition.
Holy mother.
So the ticket prices have been announced. FIFA will point out that you can get tickets for as little as $60. That can be as few as 1% of tickets for that price. Certainly looking at the prices in general, they're very high, but the resale market has opened. So I have seen tickets on sale for as much as $60,000 for a single ticket for the final. Now, to be fair, a single ticket for the final varies between $2,300 and $6,700. So what this has done, and I think there again, it's a cultural issue, which is very evident in the United States. And let's be honest, it's becoming more of an acceptable cultural issue here.
Yeah.
We saw that with Oasis.
Yeah.
People were buying tickets with no interest in Oasis, no interest in music. It was an opportunity to make money. Radiohead are playing at the O2, I think, next month for 3 or 4 nights. I'm a big Radiohead fan, but second-hand tickets are going for £600 or £700. So what we've got, I'm not saying it's organised crime. It's organised cottage industries. So people will simply try to get as many of these tickets as possible. They know that live events, whether that be music, other aspects of entertainment, or now sport, there is huge demand for them. But what FIFA are doing, as well as the fact that they're making themselves the official tickets out, is they're making a hell of a lot of money out of this. If you buy a ticket, so let's say I buy that $60,000 ticket for the World Cup final, be honest, it's a nice position. I'm not denying that. FIFA would charge me 15% as a fee. So 15% of 6,000 is 9,000. And then when it comes to the seller, FIFA will deduct 15% from the proceeds and keep it for themselves. So therefore they will get $18,000 on a ticket which they've already sold for $6,000, of course. So they'll get $24,000 in respect of this particular transaction. So they're acting, and we see this in auctions. So I'm trying to be as level and objective as I can here. I've attended auctions where you pay a buyer's premium and a seller's commission. That they are dealing from both the top and the bottom of the deck, and they will be making an absolute fortune from this.
As anybody who listened to the questions pod will know, I haven't quite mastered the art of the silent sneeze, but I have mastered the art of the silent sigh, which is handy because there's about 5 of them where you went through that story. It's just almost beggars, but I mean, I don't know how many tickets there are for sale in general, but a lot of those will be bought and sold. FIFA are making a lot of money out of this. Do we know the tax situation though? Because that was still slightly unclear, wasn't it? Because the charity situation, because normally FIFA become a charity in the country, don't pay any tax. Is that going to change?
Yeah, I'm pretty certain FIFA won't be paying any tax themselves. They normally negotiate also, I think, on behalf of the players. I don't think that one's just been resolved to date. But yeah, FIFA, the smashy and nicey of global sports is doing an awful lot of work for charity itself.
Well, except as we discovered recently, some of the charity money hasn't been paid to the charities, has it? But the Cure, Kieran. I mean, you told us already you've bought tickets to see the Cure in Dublin.
Yep.
Next year, I believe.
Manchester.
And Manchester.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
The Cure, to their enormous credit, make it very difficult for tickets to be resold at a profit for their gigs, don't they? So it is possible, if you have the goodwill, to be able to not see your fans fleeced, isn't it?
Yes. The terms and conditions state that. The downside, and they say that if your tickets are seen to be up for resale, then we reserve the right to cancel the tickets. I've been on to the websites of the likes of StubHub and Viagogo, and Radiohead have tried to do something similar. And it actually says on one of these resellers' websites is that, these tickets cannot be resold. So therefore, if you're buying them at your own risk. But in reality, there's not that many checks. So, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. So therefore, we're still making them available.
And of course, the thing is, Kieran, as we've just discussed, it seems to me you're going to have a lot of fans unable to cross a lot of borders in America who have tickets, who handily for FIFA, they'll say, well, don't worry about that. Sorry you can't come into the country. Sorry you've been detained for no apparent reason. But just for just 15% of the face value, we'll sell that on to somebody who has got into the country. It's just... Silent sigh. Don't forget you can now join our Price of Football Club, where you'll get ad-free listening, bonus episodes and more. Just go to priceoffootball.com and click on Join the Club to sign up today. And one of the bonus episodes we've just recorded, Kieran, for
We have
a bonus questions pod, one of which was a very whimsical question
Yes.
about whether lawyers could charge when Man City fans sing their names at football grounds, which is very funny. So, yeah, pricefootball.com and join the club. Click on that and you can sign up today. If you've got a question you have answered on our regular Tuesday email us at questions@pricefootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy our book, go to that same website, priceoffootball.com, for details. We'll be back next Tuesday on the other side of an unnecessary football break with our questions pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Indeed, we will be. The next show is on Tuesday. And if you say, these two guys, they sound like they'll be entertaining live, you'll have the opportunity to do that in the magnificent city of Belfast. We're at the National Stadium next Tuesday night. We're really looking forward to it. The president of the Irish FA is coming up on stage, as is the chief executive. So we'll have Conrad and Patrick there. If I have been contacted by some educational establishments saying, "Look, Kieran, you work in education. Any chance of doing anything for us?" I'm delighted to say that if you go to Eventbrite and you type in student 50, you'll get in for half price. So I'm doing my bit for the Wolfie Smiths and for the student grants. Biz fans will know who I'm talking about there. So we are coming to Belfast. We're also coming to Brighton. We're doing a gig on behalf of Samaritans and the Premier League's very laudable attempts to make suicide awareness more visible, and we're looking forward to that as well. And we've had various people trying to get us to come to various places. Myself and Kevin, we've got, I think it's fair to say, scatty diaries, and we're not the most organised people, to put things very mildly, but we will try to do a few more as well in due course.
I feel almost on a bound now, Kieran, to say that any Northern Irish comedians who want to come along to the show, there should be something on Eventbrite that they can get a 50% discount as well.
Well, say that they're student comedians.
Well, that's a good idea. They're the worst sort of student comedians.
I can imagine, yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.